I have made a lot of just awesome friends over the last couple of weeks. And these people over at the Psychedelics and Philosophy Forum have just been so absolutely amazing that they have so many questions about psychedelics. They have so many questions about the experiences. They have so many questions about consciousness and where they're going. And I think back to myself when I was 14 years old and when I tried my first hit of LSD. If I would have known back then what I know now, I would be so much more advanced than I am right now. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to open up this forum and take some calls, 213-233-3998 and 866-37-TRUTH. We have about 350 questions that we're going to try to go over this evening. Frank Castle is going to be joining us in the second and third hour of the broadcast as well. But there were some really good questions. And so on that note, I wanted to make sure to go ahead and answer those questions for everybody. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. Let me just move this over a little bit. I think that's a great idea. I've been also talking with some of these kids, and I am just floored by the amount of knowledge that they already seem to have about these things. I can't even imagine being their age and knowing what they know. It's an amazing feeling to find like-minded people like that.
Oh, sorry. Tonight I have so many different things on my screen that I'm still trying to get used to, all of these different gadgets and all these different programs and everything. So sorry about that. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, I'm amazed at the amount of heart that I'm seeing with people, the amount of love and understanding and just openness to everyone is really great to see. And some of these questions were really, really deep and thought-provoking questions and made us even think twice and think, whoa, ooh, I never thought of it that way. Maybe I should think about this a little bit deeper, a little bit further. And it's not just about psychedelics. The philosophy of it is even more important because the philosophy is your everyday reaction to the psychedelics.
You're absolutely right. Let's take a quick break and we will be right back and we'll get to some of these questions. Also, 213-233-3998 and 866-37-TRUTH. We'll be right back. We were talking to all of these people from the Psychedelic and Philosophy Forum, and they started asking a bunch of questions. And I realized that essentially a lot of people out there are starseeds, and you guys may be feeling like you just don't quite belong here, or this world is kind of different, or this world is very foreign and very dense. And Dolores Cannon, if you've never actually heard that name before, you need to look her up. She recently passed away back in 2014 or 2015. But she was an amazing hypnotherapist who started regressing people all the way back to past lives and going further and further and further back. And she came to the realization that there were so many different people that were reporting the exact same thing about having life on other planets, about being in a higher dimension, and then coming back down to this lower dimension in order to help the Earth for a particular reason. And that reason is to help ascend and shift this Earth back into that higher state of consciousness and higher frequency. So the first wave, according to Dolores, came in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And it was very dense. And a lot of them committed suicide or tried to commit suicide at some point in time. And the reason for this is because they just didn't realize what they had gotten themselves into. They had been through the physical three-dimensional experience before, but they had forgotten what it was like because they shifted up. And then the second wave came in the 80s and the 90s. And these kids now are more in tune and aware of what's going on. And that's our generation here, which is the second wave. And we act as kind of the beacons and the energy force that is kind of a conduit for the energy. So just us being here and existing, we sometimes walk into a room, and I don't know if you're feeling that out there. Sometimes you walk into a room and you can change the entire dynamic of the room just because of the energy and the frequency that you're vibrating on and radiating on. So you're not only a conductor, but you're also a transmitter as well. And then you have the new kids. And the new kids are the next generation. And those are the ones that are now in their teens, early 20s. And they're the ones who we're essentially passing the torch to. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, how wonderful of a time it is that we live in, where we can interact with all of these great people out there. Now, the traits of these new kids is, first of all, they don't like school. I never liked school either. And one of the main problems of school is that the teachers try to teach you certain things and you already get it. You already know it just the first time, but they try to teach you over and over and over again. And then they may say, show your work, show how you got to that conclusion. Well, you don't necessarily have a way you got to that conclusion. You've come here with a certain gnosis and a certain knowing. So we have 3 different generations and 3 dynamics of children that we're dealing with right now. And when I say children, I mean starseeds. And there's many different types of starseeds. There's indigos and there's rainbow kids and there's crystal kids and so on and so forth. I don't really get into the details and the semantics behind the different labels. But I know one thing for sure, that the physical dimension, planet Earth, is in trouble. I feel as if with this Donald Trump timeline, and I don't want to get too political on this show, but I feel that when Donald Trump took office, that was a marker that we have actually shifted into a positive timeline. All of our efforts as light workers over the past several years have started to come to fruition. And now we have a new timeline where the darkness is starting to die away. And we're seeing the death throes of this darkness. So this is the time that we all need to stand up, activate, and shine our lights. And it all depends on your particular journey, your particular path here. If your path is just to be a conductor and a transmitter of energy, then that's what you need to do, and you do that the best you can. If your path is something else, then you find that path and you live it to the fullest. It's time to throw off all the physical BS. It's time to throw off all of our misconceptions of reality and all of the programming. The first instinct when you encounter one of these kids is to, at least as a parent, is to say, hey, this person has hyperactive disorder. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with my child?
ADD.
Why? Yeah, ADD, so on and so forth. And we have a pharmaceutical industry that drugs the hell out of everybody with psychopharmaceuticals. As a matter of fact, back in the 90s, they were boasting about how their profits are going to go up when they start doing certain tests and testing these kids and putting kids on pharmaceuticals earlier and earlier and earlier. What that does is that extinguishes the light. We each have a light inside of us. I have a friend that has a 3-year-old that's never been vaccinated, never had fluoride, never had any of that, and she is just the most amazing little thing.
Oh, she's a little ball of light running around.
Yeah, and he sits back and looks at her and says, wow, compares her to the other 3-year-olds, and she's just way more ahead, way smarter, way brighter, and she gets it. So as parents, we definitely don't want to extinguish that light within our children. But ultimately, if you are one of those children that are experiencing this kind of extra sense, this kind of gnosis, then you need to hold on to it and you need to embrace it because you were sent here for a purpose. There's a lot of other souls that are here for the typical lessons that souls learn when they come here. So I guess the first thing to do, in my opinion, is to understand the fabric of reality, the construct that we live in, and why we're here. In my opinion, in 25 years of doing psychedelics, I've realized a lot of insights. And those insights have to do with why so many different people are here. The universe is nothing more than a university. And there's many different levels and there's many different classes. And we go through these classes and we graduate. But the Starseeds have come from a higher class to come down and teach the younger souls that are still here learning. But the entire university is in trouble. The entire university is under attack by a terrorist organization that is this dark energy that has crept into our construct. And this is why we've been activated to shine these lights. So ask yourself, what is your path? What is your purpose here? And psychedelics is the best tool, in my opinion, to do this. There's meditation, there's chanting. We're going to bring on guests throughout this show. I guess I should have prefaced it by saying that we've been broadcasting for about 7 years. So we're pretty well connected with people like Dennis McKenna. Mitch Schultz is going to be on with us in a couple of weeks, the producer of DMT, the Spirit Molecule. David J. Brown is another dear friend of mine. Basically, everybody in the film DMT, the Spirit Molecule. We've even had Joe Rogan on the show before.
We had Dr. Rick Strassman. Did you mention him?
Yeah, and Rick Strassman, too. Yeah. So we're going to try to bring all of these great minds here so you can call in, get questions answered. And it doesn't matter what type of question it is. The only question that we won't answer is, where can I get some LSD or where can I get some DMT? And I see it all the time posted on the forum. And I do want to say that I think that's a very bad thing to do, post something like that, because you're incriminating yourself. And if you answer it, you're incriminating yourself as well. A lot of it could be a trap. So we got to be really, really careful with that, which is why we never answer any questions like that. And it's a shame because psychedelics really have no adverse effects. One of the ideas is that LSD doesn't have any toxicity, and maybe pure LSD doesn't have any toxicity. However, you don't know what you're getting on the street. And I can share from my personal experience back in the late 90s. They busted one of the biggest LSD manufacturers. At the exact same time, they busted Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was the underboss of John Gotti in New York. He was in the Witness Protection Program in Arizona, and he was bringing in the majority of MDMA. This happened at the exact same time. Also, what happened is that the DEA put the precursor for MDMA on the watch list, which is sassafras or saffrol. And all of a sudden, you had all these manufacturers now scurrying because they didn't know how to make good MDMA anymore because they couldn't get the precursor. So they started using things like PMA, 2CB, and several other things that are very toxic. So these have the effect of a weak MDMA dose, but they have a much lower overdose threshold. And you've got to look up the LD50. The LD50 is lethal dose that 50% of rats died under. So you don't know what you're getting on the street, and it's really a shame. And I blame the DEA first and foremost for the problems that we're having in society with overdoses and so on and so forth. My stance on drugs in general is, first of all, Bayer Pharmaceutical, who created heroin, that is a very dangerous and physically addictive drug, should be responsible for treating heroin addicts in this day and age because they're the ones that created it.
They actually created it as a cure for morphine addiction. Can you believe that? I mean, that's how evil they are about that.
So when it comes to psychedelics, for example, let's put it in the hands of legitimate business owners. And I'll tell you one thing about the strength of our show here is that just recently the DEA was going to ban kratom, which is a natural plant that comes from Thailand. It replaces a lot of your Vicodins and things like that for pain, and I mean, even just to relax as well. Although I wouldn't recommend it because kratom can start a physical addiction in the same way that coffee or caffeine can, and then you start getting headaches and you start just feeling weird. It's not. I don't like kratom personally. However, we had David J. Brown on, and there was a petition on WhiteHouse.gov against the kratom ban because the DEA just came out of nowhere, and the underlying legality behind that, or the backroom deals, was that the DEA was actually working, not at the DEA, a pharmaceutical company was working on a synthetic form of kratom, whatever the actual chemical in kratom is. Mitragynine, there you go. And so they wanted to get it off the streets so they can push their drugs on you. Absolutely ridiculous. So the DEA stepped in with an emergency ban, and there were about 20,000 signatures on this petition. David J. Brown came on the show. 3 days later, there were 120,000 names on there. The DEA didn't move forward with the ban. So we were able to actually shift that paradigm, and we were actually able to shift that reality in the direction of freedom, personal freedom. But with personal freedom comes responsibility. And that's another thing we want to help people, and we want to teach people, is how to be responsible, and also how to do this kind of stuff with intention. That's key. See, from 14 to about 25, I had no idea what I was doing. I was taking some LSD, candy flipping, MDMA, you name it, and going out to raves and dancing all day. Or all night, I should say. And then there were some other fun activities afterwards as well.
Maybe.
Some of the guys understand out there. Those were the good old days. So, but I didn't have an intention. But if I understood that, wait a minute, the best experiences are not at a rave. The best experiences are in nature, or with a shaman, or at home even, inside instead of outside. I remember when I first came across DMT, I was smoking it and thought to myself, this isn't really doing much. And I'd close my eyes and, oh my God, blast it off into another world. And then I'd open my eyes and some tracers and some things like that. And I thought to myself, you know what? This doesn't make any sense. Closed eye visuals. Am I just imagining this all in my mind, or what? And then I took a couple more hits and I didn't have a body anymore after that point. But my point is that I realized that the actual enlightenment, insights, visuals, contact with entities, you name it, comes from inside. You've got to use your third eye, not your two eyes. And with LSD, I think a lot of people try to use their two eyes. At least that was my experience. I love to put on Pink Floyd and watch the walls breathe. As a matter of fact, one of the questions we got was, what was your first LSD experience like? It was nothing to write home about. I was watching a local band play. I was about 14 years old. We used to go down to this club, and I popped a couple of, I think it was actually one hit of acid. And we were listening to something like Nirvana on the way home, and then I started listening to Black Sabbath when I got home, and I started watching the walls breathe. I had no idea, but I do remember this. I remember thinking to myself, you know what? This is what it's supposed to feel like. Because I'd smoked pot, and that's it up to that point. And I'm like, they make a big deal over this? Like, what's, I'm just a little bit relaxed. This is nothing. And then, oh, now I understand. They don't want you thinking in this dynamic. And the first thing actually, though, the first thing that came to my mind was, I'm getting a glimpse into the spirit world. Oh, I see what's going on here. But anyways, so yeah, with intention, we can really break barriers. And I hope that there's some kids out there. And when I use the word kids, I was using the word kids with a friend of mine, and she's like, oh my God, what do you mean kids? I'm like, oh, 20, 30 years old. I'm an old guy, so 20-year-old is a kid to me, but I say it in the most loving and adoring way. So I hope that some of the kids out there can learn, because if you start utilizing some of these methods and techniques and understanding intention, then by the time you get to be my age, you're going to be 10 times ahead of me. And that's what I want to do. I have a light that shines like this. I want your light to shine like this. That's what it comes down to.
Oh, absolutely. And it's hard being the snowplow. And
why don't you bring that a little closer?
Yeah. I didn't want to make a whole lot of noise with it.
It's okay.
The thing about being a starseed or being a user of psychedelics is that you're part of a generation that is trying to be the snowplow. And the reason why Dolores Cannon, that Chris mentioned earlier, the reason why Dolores Cannon said that the starseeds born in the 60s and the 70s, and the 60s and the 70s had such a hard time was because they were the snowplow. They were the first contact of starseeds with regular humans on this planet. And as a result, they were shunned. They were forced to be people that they weren't, they didn't feel like being. It wasn't okay to be yourself back then. And as a result, yes, a lot of suicides and a lot of drug problems. A lot of those starseeds fell through the cracks, and that's very sad. But on the other hand, they did act as the snowplow so that the ones that were born in the 80s and the 90s and even up until today are able to live their lives, be who they are, and shine their light.
Excellent. So on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. We will get to some of your questions right on the other side, right here on Beyond the Veil. That reminds me back in the day for sure.
I just know. I was thinking he's probably having flashbacks in a good way. In a good way.
So, yeah, I think this is going to be great with the video show. Frank Castle is going to be joining us via satellite coming up at the top of the hour. But let's get to some of the questions that people were asking. What sticks out to you?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. Is permatripping real?
That's a great question.
That is a really good question.
In my opinion, yes and no. So yes, it's real in the sense that if you have a vial of LSD and it soaks into you, then it's probably going to cause some problems. No, in the sense that I've never seen anybody fall victim to it in the 25 years that I've been doing psychedelics. So, there's a lot of horror stories out there. A lot of them are just propaganda. People jumping off buildings and thinking that they're birds and all this stuff. Even though you do become a bird, that's a whole nother story, but you don't think you can fly. At least if you're pretty sane in your regular life, you're going to be sane in, under psychedelics, in my opinion. I've never seen a hallucination except for one time that I couldn't determine whether it was real or whether it was in my mind. I was candy flipping one time and I saw this big tarantula on my leg and I couldn't tell if it was real or not. And I didn't want to smash it because it was a tarantula and I figured it would bite me if I tried to smash it. But, and we were down in Texas, so we had tarantulas down there. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it just melted right into my pants. And I was like, oh, okay, that was just a vision, just a hallucination. But one of my favorite things, though, is shared hallucinations. Mm-hmm. When you candy flip with somebody or take some MDMA and I'm not MDMA, LSD, and you're actually seeing the same things. I remember sitting out one evening with my girlfriend at the time. Again, this was back when I was in my 20s. I was looking at the sky and we saw this UFO appear. We both did at the same time. Now, the UFO appeared within the clouds, but you could see the outline of it coming out of the clouds, and we both saw it. So the question is, was it a hallucination, or did LSD open up some other level of perception to where we could see something that's always in the sky, but we typically can't see it because of some kind of cloaking technology or whatnot? And that's a question that I've been pondering my entire life.
Well, and there was the time that we were doing ayahuasca and we looked outside. It was really, really late at night. It was the middle of the summer and we saw a deer going towards the lake. And he said, "Is that real?" And I said, "I think it is." And he said, "I don't think it is." And we argued for about 5 minutes straight about whether or not it was a real deer. But yes, psychedelics in general are wonderful at opening those doors of perception. Another good question was, any weird long-term side effects?
Enlightenment, a sense of gnosis. But again, it was all done with intent. So you typically are told that if you do LSD for too long, then you start to get these weird effects. And I remember that. I remember when I was doing it too much, I would see tracers, residual effects, or when I would smoke a joint, I would start to see tracers as well. It's normal. I don't think it's anything permafry or anything. However, on a long-term basis, when used with the proper intention, you can actually start to unlock what I believe is fifth dimensional abilities. And again, it all comes from a sense of gnosis and a sense of intuition. So you become telepathic, but it's not telepathic in the way that you've been told telepathy works, where you can read somebody's mind. You can feel somebody's intentions instead. I have had experiences where for 2 or 3 days after drinking a very heavy dose of ayahuasca, I'll start to see lights within people's third eye, and some of them awake, some of them really bright, and the most chilling of all is that some people were walking around with no light, almost as if they were an empty container. And I started to unlock a lot of the mysteries of the universe, at least for myself. And part of that was the question that perhaps not everybody here in this reality is actually a soul. What if there are just some organic containers walking around in order to keep the system at a perpetual state? And that's why you have so many quote unquote sheep out there. I hate using that term because I don't want to speak derogatory of anybody. However, there are some people out there that just simply don't get it, will not get it, and will never get it. It makes me wonder if they're just operating on a program instead of actually having a driver inside of their avatar.
Another good question is, which ones do you prefer and why? I think he's talking about psychedelics.
Ayahuasca. With ayahuasca and DMT, hands down. LSD is a great introduction, in my opinion. But it's only an introduction because there's only so far you can get into it. Now, I never experienced 20, 30, 40 doses of LSD as some people claim to have. So I don't know what happens when you cross into those boundaries, and I wouldn't recommend it because you're dealing with something synthetic. So you don't want to push the limits on something synthetic, because if there's something else in there, then you don't know what though. I mean, we already went over this, the LD50 and adulterants and so on and so forth. However, with ayahuasca, I was able to open up doors of perception and travel into dimensions that I didn't realize existed. And LSD makes the room change. DMT makes the room disappear and blasts you off into a completely different dimension. The one thing that I haven't tried, and I don't think that I want to, is 5-methoxy DMT. So there's 2 different types of DMTs. There's NN-DMT and 5-methoxy DMT. 5-methoxy, from what I've heard, is, first of all, 10 times stronger, but it's not nearly as visual. So you don't see the geometric patterns. You may not encounter entities, and it's kind of a blackness where you're just blasted off into nothingness and you experience basically oblivion. That doesn't sound like a very enlightening experience to me, and one that probably would scare the hell out of me, as it scared the hell out of many other people. I like to traverse into the other realms, into hyperspace and into the 9th dimension. Now, I did promise somebody on the forum, though, that if I ever came across 5-methoxy DMT, I will try it. So I do stick to that promise, and I promise if I ever come across it, I will try it, but I'm not going to actively seek it out.
Oh, I don't blame you. I think Terrence McKenna once said something negative about 5-methoxy DMT. He said that, you can get a pretty good amount of either that or regular DMT from boiled rabbit lung. But he said, I don't prefer 5-methoxy DMT because of the lack of visuals and how it's very, very hard on the body. Apparently it has a really high body load. And that's another thing you need to think about when you're thinking about your favorite psychedelics. Drugs that are man-made are incompatible with life after you hit a certain point. However, DMT is so compatible with human life that the brain takes it up so quickly and recognizes it immediately as what it is, that's how long the trip lasts, 5 minutes. You smoke anything else and it lasts at least an hour, 2 hours, something like that. But no, not with DMT. With DMT, your body sees it as part of itself and just takes it real quick. Just doop. That's it. And that's why I prefer DMT and ayahuasca, because even though that's the only psychedelic class I've ever tried, I know that I can trust it.
That's pretty interesting. And Jeff, the person that put together the psychedelics and philosophy group, and thank you so much, Jeff, for doing that. You've brought together so many great people. You don't understand the role that you've played in this. It's absolutely amazing. He was asking a question the other day, is DMT produced by the pineal? And I wrote him a private message and I said, well, we had Rick Strassman on a couple of years ago, and Rick was pretty certain that it was produced by the lungs rather than the pineal, but it travels up to the pineal. Mm-hmm. Now, that's interesting that you can get DMT out of rabbit lungs, because that tells me that maybe he's onto something, that the lungs actually do produce the DMT as opposed to the pineal gland.
Well, it makes you wonder, because they said that they did experiments when people would die and they would lose exactly, what was it, 15 grams or something like that? It
28
grams.
Yeah, there's a movie, 28 grams, 15 grams, something like that.
It was like 15 or 20 grams, and the person loses exactly that much weight when the spirit leaves the body. And I'm wondering if, as you die, your lungs start to put out DMT to prepare the body for death. Then the DMT goes up to the brain and further prepares the brain, prepares the mind for the fact that you are moving on to the other side. And then the cord that holds you in your body when you're on DMT, that gets severed permanently. And then the 15 grams disappears and the spirit pops right out. I think that's how it happens.
Interesting. Well, there's like 3 different chat rooms. We've got one at tfrtolive.com. We've got one on YouTube, and some people asking questions in the forum. So just a heads up, anybody listening on TFR, on iHeartRadio, or watching on YouTube, we can't watch the chat room. So if you've got a question, give us a call. Call number is right there. Okay. So what's next?
Let's see. What is your favorite trip tunes? Like, what kind of music do you like to listen to?
I used to listen to I used to spin trance and drum and bass, and especially like Aphrodite and Urban Takeover type stuff. But that was a long time ago, and I didn't really find some of the drum and bass has some really good tribal stuff. But I've never drank ayahuasca and listened to any drum and bass or electronic music. Although I do listen to shamanic music that's mixed with a little bit of electronic, but it's more like enigma type stuff. Cherie's the expert on this because she puts together our ayahuasca playlist, and we need to post a link to that so you guys can download it. But it's a 4-hour playlist. It's always changing. Every time we drink, every time we have an experience, we listen to the songs, and if there's one not resonating, then Cherie takes it out of the playlist and replaces it with something else.
I would say
it's also laid out for the experience too. So the first few songs are to take you up, but then as you get deeper into the experience, and then as you come down from the experience, so it's all tailored like that as well.
Right, exactly. And I timed it just right to where when you start into the experience, and that means taking the MAOI before taking the ayahuasca, that is going to lift you up and positively make you feel excited about the experience you're about to have. And then as you're drinking the actual brew, then it gets into the serious stuff, and it gets more and more serious as it peaks, and then it starts to bring you out of it with lighter and lighter music that's more uplifting and more uplifting. And by the end of it, you are on cloud 9. It is amazing to see the correlation between the type of music and what you're seeing when you're on ayahuasca. It is incredible. Music is everything. Music sets the tone. It's a very important part of the set and setting.
I smoked DMT listening to, I don't remember what it was. It was dun 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 dun. They use it in South Park. Heavy metal. Heavy metal,
yeah. But
it wasn't a bad experience, but it wasn't a good experience either. It was just weird, man.
Waterbone and Enigma. Those are the two staples that I would say that you would need in any psychedelic repertoire. Another question comes from Mark Granger. What do you think the place is where you go that connects all?
That place is home. in my opinion. But I've kind of created a cartography of these states. And, you know, there's a lot of people on the fence, whether it's subjective or objective. I was actually just speaking to Jeff via private message the other day, and we were talking about the possibility of objective versus subjective experiences. I feel as though these experiences are objective, that we're actually going somewhere. And the first level is the nursery where the elves reside. And they teach you different things, and they do, it's like an introduction into hyperspace. So when I first encountered the elves, they were like little starfish guys about this big, and they were bouncing around, and they were off in the distance, and they were talking to me, and some was English and some words were something else. And they were just moving very, very quickly across my vision. And then they would jump into my consciousness, pull something out, and then jump back out. So they pulled money out, and the two of them took the word money appeared, and two of them started stretching it out like that. And they were tossing it back and forth between each other. And they were asking me, what is this? What is this? They were very curious. What is this? And I said, well, that's money. That's how we buy things. And they're like, why do you need to buy things? And I said, well, that's the way our dimension works, is we use money to buy things that we need. And they said, oh, that's so silly. Why don't you just talk? And why don't you just make stuff happen with your voice? And I was like, it doesn't work like that. And they're like, yes, it does. Watch, we can do it. Poop. And they would make these little geometric patterns, and then they would bounce those back and forth between each other. And then they jumped into my mind again, and they pulled out the word sex, and they're like, what's this? And I was like, that's sex. That's what we do when we show love to each other, or sometimes we just do it for fun. And they were, again, stretching out the word and pulling it around and tossing it back and forth between one another. And they're like, why don't you use it to make stuff? And I said, well, that's not really how it works. I mean, you can make a baby with it, but that's about it. And they, no, you can make whatever you want with it. Mm-hmm. And the underlying message was sex magic there. Using the energy of orgasm, for example, to manifest reality. So when you start to tap into these higher realms, you can start to utilize not only psychedelics, but other tools as well. And then you start to realize that a lot of the things you do in your daily life actually go towards your intentions. If you put the right intention in, then you go towards your goals. That's a better way to put it. If you put the right intentions into it. So then all of a sudden you start living your life in this higher dimension, and everything you do, you start to do with one goal or one intention in mind. For example, food, you can take a look at it and say, okay, let me preface it by saying this. I grew up in a Greek house, and my mother made cooking an event, and it was family time, and it was good time. And so I always saw food as pleasurable, fun, family, unity, community, so on and so forth. And as a result, gained a little bit of weight in my time, which is okay. However, I started looking at food in a different dynamic, and I started looking at it like computer code. Okay, so if I put this piece of computer code in my body, what's it going to do to my computer code? So I see a piece of cake, for example, and say, you know what, that piece of code right there, it may work well with this code here, but it's not going to work well with the rest of my code. And as a result, I dropped 40 pounds a while back, about a year ago, but I stopped with the mentality, and I sunk back down into the lower frequency, and I fell down into the old habits again. But I did learn how to look at things differently. And it's an ever-growing process. I mean, it's a nonstop process where you're constantly trying to stay in the higher frequency while operating in the matrix. Just like Neo. Neo could jump into the matrix, operate there. He can jump out. He can operate there. He can jump in. He can manipulate it however he wanted. He had complete control over the matrix and reality. That's what we need to do. And it's very difficult because we're, right here stuck in this physical. If you pinch yourself, it's going to hurt. Regardless of whether this reality is real or not, it's still going to send those impulses and make you believe that it's real. So there's a lot of elements in this reality that make you believe that this reality is real. And it's easy to fall back into old habits and whatnot. But as long as you're trying, doesn't matter how many times you stumble and fall. It really doesn't. It's all part of the journey anyway it goes.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems like the DMT elves are my default setting, because ever since the first time all the way up until today, if I don't have a solid intention for the trip, for the journey, then I will immediately be shuffled into the realm of spinning and colors and geometric patterns and these beings telling me to make things with my mouth and like make objects come out of me by talking. And it is an amazing experience. But like I said, if I have an intention going into it, I get so much more out of it than just DMT elves showing me that I can create reality with my thoughts. Our thoughts are most of our reality is comprised of our thoughts. The outside stimulation, I think it takes up 2 or 3% of what's actually going on in our minds at any given time. 97% is up here. Yeah, definitely. Do you regret any of the mind-altering drugs, and why? Why do you ingest psychedelics? That's a question from Kitty Carnes.
That's a great question. So, there's nothing that I regret. There's no bad experiences. I've gone through some hell in my life, and I don't regret any of it because it's made me who I am, and it's brought me to this very moment. All the experiences that I went through, I had to go through in order to come to this place that I am right now. So the only bad experiences that we ever have in life are the ones that we fail to learn from. So if you're looking at an experience and saying, oh, how bad was it? You're not asking yourself the question, what did I learn from it? Once you go, oh, I learned that from it, then it becomes a good experience. So with psychedelics as well, I've never had a bad trip. One time we were on our way to a rave, and I was candy flipping again, as we always did when we went to raves. And we were walking by somebody's house, or I don't remember. No, I remember. Okay, the rave was out in somebody's field. And they owned a bunch of land, and they had this radiator out that was creating heat, and I put my hand on it, not realizing what it was, and burnt my hand up, and my whole hand just like that. And so the whole night I was sitting there dealing with my hand, just that sucked. But it wasn't a bad experience. I learned not to put my hand on that anymore. So
you never told me about that one.
Yeah, I learned from that.
I've hurt myself on ayahuasca before. You don't feel it until the next day, but the next day you could really feel it if you did it hard enough. I hit my head on ayahuasca one time. It was because you do feel a little bit disoriented when you're getting up and trying to go to the bathroom or go outside for some fresh air, and you have to be very careful not to hurt yourself. I think we have time for a few more questions. Nihai Echo said, what do you think of the theory that mushrooms are an intelligent life form that uses human hosts to spread its own growth?
Interesting. I've never thought of that before, but why don't you tell me your revelation, your ayahuasca revelation about vegetables?
Well, my revelation was I was talking to this plant, and she was telling me that plants love to get eaten because it's not like they're getting eaten in the same way that you're eating a cow or you're eating a pig or you're eating an animal. It's completely different because it's about when you eat an animal, it's about death. So that's death food. That's something that has given its life energy so that you can live. Whereas plants are living food, even from the time you put them in your mouth to the time they come out the other end of you. They are part of you. They have become part of you just as you have become part of them. They integrate with you completely and love to be eaten because then they're just recycled into another plant and to another plant and to another plant. And it's a never ending cycle it's more of a healthy spiritual way of looking at things, to think of plants as living food. And Terrence McKenna used to talk about the stoned ape theory. And his theory was that mushrooms are actually an alien species that was put here on Earth to communicate with us through us eating them. And when we ate them when we were I don't want to say monkeys, but when we were in our lower stages of development, we ate these mushrooms on a pretty regular basis. And the ones that ate the mushrooms developed better visual acuity, their IQs went up, and they became better hunters. As a result, they mated more, and millions of years later, here we are.
Excellent. So let's take another quick break. And for everybody watching on YouTube, the reason we're taking breaks, we've got some AM and FM affiliates as well that we send our show to. We got to keep our clock structure the same. However, we'll see about future shows because I don't like these interruptions either. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Imagine a world with no boundaries. Imagine a world with infinite possibilities. This is your world. A world of never-ending consciousness. Welcome, fellow Starseeds, indigo and crystal children. The universe is yours, to forge as you wish. You must heal what our parents have destroyed. Into the darkness you will bear the light. Have no fear. We pass the torch to you. As you step beyond the veil.
All right, we'll be joined by our dear friend, fellow host on Truth Frequency Radio again, Frank Castle, and we'll take some more questions and just have some fun this evening talking about psychedelic experiences, philosophy, so on and so forth. I'm really happy with the way things are going. A few technical snafus here and there, but it is what it is. So next time I'll get the swing of it. There's a lot going on here. If you guys could see what's going on here, it's freaking incredible. Like, I don't even know how I'm pulling it off. I got my video stuff here in front of me. I got my audio stuff here on the side, working the mixers, working the camera changer, working everything. So we're having fun. Anyways.
I think fate is on our side. Everything is working out really, really well. So, and yes, we are reading the chat room on YouTube, as well as the chat room on TFR, truthfrequencyradio.com. And the other chat room that we have as well, I think that one's on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a scattered mess tonight, and I couldn't get the show out to everybody that I wanted to. But it's okay. So let's just keep it going, and we'll have some fun.
Yeah, I think so. Do you want to keep going with questions? Or
yeah, go ahead and shoot me another one.
Okay. Tell me how you can still understand the human species.
I don't. But I don't know how we hate so much and how we have all this inside of us. But there is we've all been subjected to systematic brainwashing, starseeds or not. We've all been subjected to that. So when I encounter somebody that has been subjected to that systematic brainwashing, I just think to myself, well, it took time for me to break out of it. And there's still many layers, and I may be subjected to some of it right now, and I don't even know it, because when you're inside of it, you can't see it. So I try to give everybody the opportunity to break themselves out of the brainwashing. And when I see terrible things happening in the world, I think to myself, we're going to get over this. We're going to shift this, and we're going to shift this into a new timeline. There are some dark forces here, though, and one of the things that helps is to understand that some of the darkness in the world is not human. There's another element outside of what we have been told is human.
This matrix is very mysterious. And it is a mystery to me how the human race is still alive after everything we've been through and everything we've put each other through. But that's the thing about starseeds. They always seem to find one another. And I think it's because of that spidey sense that we all seem to have that leads us to the right place at the right time to hear what we need to hear. And that's kind of why we started the show 7 years ago, was because of that very reason.
Yes. So let's take our customary 6-minute mark break. We'll be right back. All right, let's get into the second hour of the broadcast. And I realize we got a lot of people listening on the radio. We haven't said the caller number. The caller number is on the screen right there. 213-233-3998 and 866-37-TRUTH. But I don't know if we're going to get to any callers tonight because we've just got so much to go over. So many questions as well. We do have Frank Castle, who is our dear friend, shaman, and neo-shaman out of New York. And he's a fellow host here on Truth Frequency Radio. Fearless is the name of the show. You can catch it the hour leading up to us at tfrlive.com. And that is 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock Pacific. And what is that? 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock Eastern time. So I think we have Frank Castle on with us. Frank Castle, how you doing, sir?
All right.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Excellent. Great. How is everything in the world of Frank Castle?
Well, everything seems to be the new learning experience. New levels, new devils. It's kind of scary at times, but that's the fearless path, right? To get over these things.
Things are getting pretty intense, I would say. Sherry, go to a couple of questions real quick, and let's see if we can get a couple of good questions that people asked for Frank, because two minds are much better than one, obviously. And one of the questions that people asked was, what's your favorite psychedelic? I think I already know the answer to that.
My favorite is definitely ayahuasca.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How does that compare to mushrooms or LSD?
I'll be honest, I haven't, all of my experiences growing up with psychedelics, I've had some weird ones with mushrooms where it pushed the boundary, where I thought I had telepathy. There was weird stuff going on, but nothing was what I encountered with DMT. And then with DMT showed it to me, and then ayahuasca allowed me to stay in it and just start asking questions and learning, what's going on. It's hard for people to take a 4-hour journey or a 6-hour journey. That's a commitment. I prefer the commitment.
What about DMT versus ayahuasca? DMT versus ayahuasca. What do you think about that?
You get to see, everyone sees something different, depending on what you're ready to see. So you'll see it, at least what you're ready to, but you're not going to get the benefit of anything other than some knowledge. You get some knowledge, you get, oh, look, it was there. Oh, now I know what they're talking about. Wow, yeah, that was the unexplainable. I was literally in the other realm. Aya gives you the chance to see it coming.
The way that I liken it is that it's like trying to read a book and the pages are flipping in front of your face on DMT. And you might be able to catch the title of a chapter, but you're not going to be able to catch the information. Ayahuasca, on the other hand, you're able to actually read the book, not only read the book, but absorb the book.
You can read the synopsis. You can read all the chapters in detail.
I agree. DMT showed me some interesting stuff. I met the characters right away. It's like, oh, look, the top 7 guys. Okay, interesting. So use it. This is where we're going to start. Aya helped me actually deal with it. We get PTSD. I'm in New York City. Growing up was crazy here. You don't even realize you get PTSD from bullies. Growing up, having parents have like a divorce, all kinds of weird things occur with family. friends, and when you drink ayahuasca, it removes that. It actually shows it to you. DMT just shows you the spirit world is there, if that's what you want to call it, or these realms exist, or something more is happening. I took back benefit, but not nearly as much as the Aya, because after the Aya cleans you out, you start mentally preparing for what comes next. Like you're like, okay, I'm cleaning myself out. I'm getting my whatever chakras aligned, whatever you want to call it. I'm getting all the old stuff, the fears. I'm starting to remove them. I cast out the demon, so to speak. Now what? And then it takes you into the now what.
Wow. Well, this is a question from a combination of two questions. Have you ever felt like you were losing it, like going crazy? And have you ever had a paranoid personality disorder develop because of your use of psychedelics?
No, on the second part of the answer. And on LSD, I felt like a loss of control. On Aya, you can talk to her. There's there's someone else there. So it's different. LSD, there's never anyone there. It's like you with yourself, and that's it. I saw some interesting things. I saw reptilians on LSD, but I was just shown that, you know, where there was source, and then there was the reptile, and then there was man, and then reptile faced off against man and put him under his control, and they just showed that to me. Everything else was super synthetic, and it lasted forever. And I didn't really enjoy that as much. It's cool, but not really. The organics is the way to go.
I agree. I
want to see it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was saying that LSD is kind of the introduction, and it's a great introduction, but if you really want to get in depth, you got to go with the plants. The plants are here for a reason. Mm-hmm. And LSD versus mushrooms, I think it's like trying to synthesize and copy something that is readily available for you. And if we see what happens with pharmaceutical companies, for instance, a lot of their cures don't affect you in the same way that the natural stuff does.
I was losing it, looking around. They call it astonishment. And I said, and I call her Aya. I said, Aya, this is too much. A giant hand came in and pulled me back. When I was on LSD, I fell to the floor and I was like, yeah, I'm not getting up. Like, there's no one here that's going to help. You got to help yourself up. There's nothing in the void except the synthetic realm. You know, that's cool, but it's synthetic. That's how I see it. It was explained to me that way as well. They're like, look, it's cool, but it's just a copy of this. And that's it. Takes you to a different spot. Some people can deal with that. And some people can deal with the deep end of this place, which is what you and I do.
Well, you know, back in the 50s when MK Ultra, it was a mind control program by the U.S. government. When that was started, they based a lot of these old antidepressants on the MAOIs that you find in nature, such as Syrian rue, B-Cappy. B-Cappy has been used for thousands of years to treat depression in South America. Why aren't we using that when we get depressed, not these dangerous antidepressants?
I had horrible depression, didn't admit it. I mean, I talked about it, you know, but what are you going to do? No one's listening. I pushed through it doing all kinds of crazy things. Once Aya was like the veil was removed and I got to look and really see all that left. It was all gone.
You know, somebody asked that question.
Upload into the other side.
Somebody asked a question the other day, and you know, I can answer it my own way, but I think ultimately it's however the traveler interprets it. What is the veil to you?
It's just a frequency. It's a frequency that we're in and we're trapped in, and then you pass through it. But it's right in front of you. It's the world around you that you don't see. If everything's in a frequency and a vibration, that's what a sound that's trapped inside of a vibration over here, or a vibration trapped inside of, you know, So you're just clicking from one to another. And what does the human body do? It allows you the five senses. You can get about 4%, 5% around in your surroundings with that. You smoke DMT, you go to 100%. You literally expel yourself out and look around. You know, we've talked about coming out of the whole thing and actually looking at it for what it is, the densities that go up and down. And now you can see why music and the notes are, you know, set up that way, because it's everything goes up and down in those spirals. That's nature. And we're playing pianos like, and you're like, yo, that's beautiful. And it's like, well, you can jump in and out of frequency like that. You hold that note, ding, that's one, ding, that's another, that's another. And each one of those is a different place, fractaled off infinitely.
That's very true. And, you know, we started the show calling it Truth Frequency because everything is frequency. You're absolutely right about that. But then the natural progression was to move beyond the veil. And when you really think about matter, matter is nothing more than frequency. It's subatomic particles vibrating at a certain frequency that make up solids, liquids, and gas. So
yeah, you need all the combinations of those things. You know, light and matter. Light is matter, right? And then it's a certain density, so it changes what an object is to us. Then the frequency shifts, and that atomic structure would then shift into something new. One thing I'd find is everyone who comes across with me and works with me during ceremonies sees that we're in multiple places at the same time. That's like one of the first things they see, the fractal, boom, and they're like, we're infinite. And I'm like, absolutely. We're divine. Yep. Minus the religion. I go, yep.
That's very true. One of the things, in my opinion, that that is holding back humanity is the disconnection from our own divinity. And we have ascribed this divinity to a certain being or a series of beings or religions or even an external source that is outside of us that ultimately is keeping us from realizing who we are. And it's not a question of whether we're divine or not. It's a question of, are we living divine? And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, is that they hear a word like divinity or you are God or whatever, and they automatically go to a book, a religious book, for instance. And a lot of the religious quote unquote gods that have been put in front of us have been very destructive forces, and forces that have taken life indiscriminately and without hesitation. That's not what divine is. Divine is the opposite. Divine is what preserves life. Divine is what preserves freedom. Divine is being able to empathize with everything around us. So that's what we mean when we say that we need to achieve our own divinity. Frank, your take.
I agree. Working your divinity is multiple things. Realizing what's going on, realizing you're free, realizing where you come from, realizing how you got there. I mean, it goes on and on. It's just that a lot of those layers have been corrupted over the years on purpose through a system set up purposely to do that, knowing that us as creators inside human avatars can be basically sorcerers. I mean, for lack of a better word, the divine light is in each of us, right? And then we give away our energies to beings. Like I read the Laura One, like a chapter, a piece on my show Fearless, and the next time I went in, Ra confronted me and said, "How dare you do what you're doing?" I said, I didn't do anything. And he says, "You're reading the book. Now people turn into religion. They think it's a religion. Go back and tell them I'm not a god. There are no gods. It's what you guys are doing. You guys have a built-in thing to think like, I'll come and save you." And it's like, that's not it. That's built in from these guys over here. You want to like look to one guy to save the day, right? That's built into you, but you are the guy that saves the day. It's you. It's nobody else. It's just you. And that's really the truth behind it, right? So we've always been putting out our energy everywhere. So beings take it. There are certain beings that are here specifically for that reason. It's delicious. I'm going to take that.
That's a hard pill to swallow for some people, though, because, I mean, why do you think...
Oh, you could be religious, right? And you go to church and you're praying to this deity, right? When you're doing that, why is anything else different? Why is it anything different than what I'm saying? I find that the most religious people are like, nah, that's not real. And I'm like, but you believe in angels. When I talk about angels on my show, you told me demonic. But I'm like, have you ever gone to take the steps to actually speak to one?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you trained in Gnosticism? Knowledge? Do you seek knowledge? Or are you just like, nope, I was bad all week. Saturday, I went and I repented. Sunday, I went to church. I threw $100 for me and the family. I was like, yep, sorry. Boom, right out into the street doing what I was just doing. And then next week, I'll just come back, repeat process. It sounds like a robot. It sounds like somebody's praying to artificial intelligence, or at least praying to a being that wants you like a robot.
I had a pastor that once said, a lot of you out there are Christians on Sunday, but not Christians on Monday through Saturday. And you just come in here every week and you think that it's okay to just do whatever you want and get away with it. And I'm thinking, who are you to tell people what to do with their lives? And secondly, this is the problem with religion, is it's this idea that nothing is sacred except for this one thing. And so the attitude toward other people can sometimes be one of unacceptance, down to downright hostility towards people that are engaging in things that they don't engage in just because they don't engage in it and they don't know about it, so they don't like it. And they feel like they have the right to tell other people what they can and cannot imbibe. Right.
Well, to keep it simple, they scream, money is the root of all evil. Now give me your money or none of this is going to work. And you're like, what? So money's the magic? Actually, money is the magic. It's the anti-magic to you, to us. That's the system they put into place. Put your energy into that, the almighty dollar. You don't realize when you step out of your body and look, you see it. You see where your energy's going. You see what's around you, taking a look in. You see those preachers that are like, you got to pay for your salvation. They're calling you from a lower vibration.
And on the other,
you down from that divine layer.
And on the other hand, you've got Vietnamese monks saying 30 years ago, we are all luminous beings. Why then do we not appear before each other radiant in our illumination? I love that quote. And I will always remember that quote because it's true. We are all luminous beings and we all have this divine spark within us. And we don't see each other that way. Instead, we see each other as the enemy, as the other, as, me versus the world. And
we're taught that from birth. Right? You got to be out for yourself. You got to go out into the world and do certain things. There's fantasy, there's reality. All the vaccines and the drugs and the food and the water and everything. That's all to corrupt that. That's all to pull down. And then see, it plays in that religious area, like, well, you're playing with the 7 deadly sins, but it's an outline, and it's choice by choice. Some people are like, I don't want to do any, it's too much for me. And it's like, well, there's a lot, you're being saturated. As soon as you came out, they smacked you and injected you. Right? Then they put you were in church, you didn't know anything. Your parents don't know anything. They tell you it's whatever their religion is, wherever you're from and whatever that culture is. Nobody has a clue. But really, we're beginning to get a clue. Everyone's starting to go, the answers we're getting are not good. We don't know what to do. We're lashing out. Well, people like myself, I think I can speak for Chris on this one, decided to go inward. Check there. As above, so below. The universe is all within you, stuff like that. You could search the world, but it was really in you the whole time, Daniel-san. So there's got to be something to that. And we tried it, and look what happened. Plants are alive, and they're your best friends. They're here for you. They hold information. There's DNA information in everything. There's like an attachment to an Akashic record that's recording everything all the time. Right? Then everything else is real as well. And then what they do is they go, oh, the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, and they throw that in there, and it turns off the whole system. It's like, well, you believe in Bigfoot. Oh, Bigfoot's the one that did it. 9th dimensional goddesses just pouring love into our universe didn't do it. But the minute I said Bigfoot, it's all a lie.
I'm laughing because
it's true.
It's so true.
All the time.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I like the way you frame that because every DMT researcher, in my opinion, would agree that DMT is some kind of informational source that is prevalent in so many different species, plants, and so on and so forth, that it's very likable, or likened to is a better way to frame it, those tentacles in Avatar, where you can connect to literally everything. So it's
an organic technology.
Yes.
It's what you're talking about, the hair into the animal's hair, so that we connect and I could ride the horse, or I connect into the tree of life and I can talk to the source, the creator. It is the allegory.
And what is it that they say to each other? They don't say I love you. They say I see you. I see you. Like with my third eye, I see you on the inside. I'm not looking at your outside.
Right. And what does that mean? It's the same being witnessing itself in another avatar. That's what that means. That's a divine greeting. Mm-hmm. See, you start saying things differently. It starts changing the way it is. Right? Things change. How do you do it? I do it 10% a week, because the way DMT showed me, it was an explosion of all my realities. Chris, you were sitting in front of me. I was crying and crying. Like those were walls and layers falling down while I was sitting in, 10th density, looking around going, I could see everyone in the room.
I think I still have that video, as a matter of fact.
We do.
I recorded it.
Yep, I still have it on my computer, yeah.
I did that. I did that the other day.
You guys were nervous. Like, wake them up.
It's been a few months since I've been able to really sit down and travel. The other day, I took 4 hits and I went into the same kind of state that you were in that night. She thought I was having,
like
some
hyperventilating
or something. And I screwed up because I went in and I just said, heal me. That's all I said was heal me. I wasn't a little more specific. And so she threw me left and right and up and down. It was actually kind of violent, but she healed me. I mean, I could see the inside of her wings. That's the geometric patterns that I was seeing. It was very clear. It was an energetic, organic kind of substance. I mean, I can't even describe it, but I can tell I was inside just being completely turned around, rewritten, upside down, so on and so forth.
I almost reached out to touch him, and she told me, no, I'm working on him. Don't mess with him.
But the breathing enhanced things so much that I can't describe it. There's no words to describe some things.
Words. I laugh at that sometimes as well. I go, every time someone comes in, they go, you don't even describe it right. And you know my description. I get in there. I'm like, no, this is there. And they're like, dude, like, how do you describe? I'm like, how do you describe divine and alien and the same thing and not make it religious? Now you want to know why when Ra came in the room, people want to fall to their knees and be like, wow, oh my God. And he just stands there, and the ones that don't bow before him are the ones that are welcome into the next realm.
Well said. Frank, hold right there. We will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Much more. We've just gotten into it right here on Beyond the Veil. I'm trying to find my little camera changer here. A little different flow this evening, but nothing that we haven't done before, so we will be right back. All right, taking a step even deeper behind the veil. I wanted to show you guys something. Now that I have the camera here, I guess I can go ahead and do that. When I was describing her wings, it was very similar to this. It was the same color structure, almost the same, a lot more vibrant and a lot more colorful than this was. And it was more of a circular pattern rather than the way that the wings are here. Can you put that back on the wall so we don't break it? Thank you. But it was very three-dimensional. But I could tell it was kind of like a fleshy, energetic, organic. It's very, very difficult to describe. You just have to see it for yourself. So one of the big questions that we get out there, Frank, is how do you do these ayahuasca rituals? Do you want to share your ayahuasca recipe with us, or do you want to talk about the ritual?
I could do both.
And pre-ritual too.
Pre-ritual, yeah, very important.
All right. Basically, to keep it really simple, working where I work and around the people that I work with, there's this understanding that the people here aren't going to go 2 weeks on a diet. They're not going to do it. They don't care about the ritual as much. Like, I don't believe in magic. Like, I'm dealing with that kind of stuff. Like, man, you're just a moron. Like, I'm in the pits over here. And they were like, you're going in, so keep it simple. And I do. I keep it pretty simple. I sage. My intention is everything. They showed me exactly what to do. Eventually, they started adding on. This has been going on for years now, Chris, since that night with you. One of the things they showed me was the recipe. They said, look, this is what it is. Now you're going to go back and you're going to do this. I didn't understand it. It was like reading the book, and then I had to ask. I thought I knew it. And then they're like, don't worry, it's gonna come together. I was asking you questions and I still couldn't understand it. And you put things so simply to me. And I'm like, I'm doing that. It's just like I've never done it before. It's like I know how to dribble a basketball. And it's like, how do you know? It's like, well, I've watched them do it. It's gotta be easy, right? It's gotta riding a bike, no problem. My brother can't ride a bike. It's a problem. So I just put that effort in. And each time I got a little bit closer and a little bit more confident. And then the breakthrough was, you're here. I find the best recipe is just Syrian rue in 1 tea for 3 hours. You know, I don't really like to teach people this, but if you're going to go do it, be responsible. You know, it's simple stuff. This has been around. This isn't something they hide. Right. And then Acacia confucia, which is the burning bush.
The burning bush, yep.
You need the root of the plant. I'm still debating whether red or brown is what's good. Every time I have the red color, it's 2 hours long. Every time I have the brown color, it's 4 to 6 hours. So find yourself reputable people. You could have this in your backyard. It's not illegal. And what I do is I keep it separate. You make a 3-hour tea with the Syrian rue. And you just take the seeds out, you filter it. And you do a big pot with Acacia confucia, like a fresh water and whatever, I don't know, 100 grams. Just say, if you're doing it for a couple of people, you use like 100. And you put it on for like 12 hours. And just let it simmer down at like 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you start ticking down at that every other hour and get it down to like 150, because you don't cover it or nothing. You just stir it. Right? Now you don't mix anything. Each thing is still totally 100% fine. For your ceremony, you bless the water you're using. I love music, man. As a musician or a hip hop artist, and I love the new music I'm running into. You introduced me to quite a lot. I use ayahuasca for all the ceremonies.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes. Also on my YouTube channel, I made a meditation playlist that has a bunch of other stuff that branched. Like, I searched from ayahuasca, like, what are these? To me, they were like ethnic type songs. Like, each one was different. I resonated really hard, when I was with you, with the American Indian, the Native Americans. And then it went from there to through the drumming. And then it went to like Indian. And then it went Egyptian, like just different sways of it. And it just sounded right. And you realize you're just connecting with the frequency of something, a sound you've heard already. You've already heard it back in some past life. And we're accessing that. That's part of what you're accessing when you do psychedelics. You access things like, they show you telepathy sometimes, and you go, that can't be possible. And it's like, dude, we're trying to show you. You're just one of the first we're trying to show. But you come here every night. This is what they tell me constantly. You come here every night. Like, this is when you're here. Because I'll go, oh, no, this is really scary, guys. Hold on a second. And then I'll go, wait a second. I know you, and you. And they'll laugh in my face. And I'll go, why are you guys laughing? And then it hits me, and I go, oh, do I have to go back there? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, wow, this is pretty crazy, guys. And they're like, oh, that's crazy? They're like, just remember that when they tell you that when you believe in Bigfoot that you're crazy, and they just send you back. And I laugh. You got to have that sense of humor.
I know what you mean. You know, you told me
witnessing yourself. You know how you got to just have a sense of humor.
You told me something that really resonated, and what happened after that is I started to break it down. Well, first of all, I guess I should say what you told me is you said we need to get this down to a science, and we need to really understand the best way to do this. And we did, and we set out on a journey to find the exact pH, the exact amount of water, the exact heat, so on and so forth. And, you know, we're still experimenting, and it's an ever-changing process.
I turned it into a food once because of what Edie was talking about. I mean, it just goes on and on. Look, I apologize. I didn't finish explaining it. Do you put it, when you do it, in one? Or do you do separate drinks? Because now mine's done after that. You just strain it and you drink the Syrian rue and then wait 30 minutes and drink the acacia. And within the hour, you'll be purging. And within another 20 minutes, you're gone.
Edie gave us a super secret. I don't know. Is it super secret?
No, it's not super secret.
No? Okay. So Edie suggested that we try maclobamide. And it's not something that I would recommend for just anybody because you want the Syrian rue, you want the purge, you want all of that. But the way that we do it is we take a maclobamide first and then drink the acacia tea afterwards. The maclobamide acts like the rue, except it doesn't have any of the stomach things. You don't really purge. I mean, unless you just have some stuff inside of you. There was some stuff that I needed to get out, and it doesn't matter, you know, what I do, I'll still purge it out. And then there's other times when I won't. But the maclobamide first, and then the acacia. But with the rue, I would grind it up and just eat it in pills, like put it in little gel caps and eat. I think like 8 of them.
That would be it's 3 to 4 grams.
Yeah, 3 to 4 grams. In the guide that we put out, we put 4 to 5 grams.
Yeah.
And I wasn't accounting for smaller people
like me,
like Cherie. Yeah. So we need to go back and update that. But 3 to 4 grams of rue.
Don't ever go over 6.
But what's the difference, would you say, between grinding it up and eating it? Because I know you've done that before, and then actually making the tea.
Yeah, I would be blasting out of both ends, eating it like that. I do. I get seeds that are already crushed, like the powder.
Okay.
And I'll make like 1 gram capsules, right? And I'll give you 1 or 2, and then I'll give you 100 mLs in a little cup of 3 grams of the tea.
So that's about 3 ounces.
So you take. Yeah, it's little. It's like one of those. It's more than a shot glass, but it's smaller than a coffee.
Okay.
Okay. And I noticed they work perfectly. Once you get your brew correctly down, because you have to dose people correctly. You're right, the height and weight, but you still can't give people more than like 6. After 6, you're at 20. You're looking at death.
Yeah.
So you have to work with that, and it works with no drug. So if you think that you're going to take something like a few nights before and you'll get away with it and go under, it doesn't work well with just about anything. So if you're not clean when you do this, you're pretty much in trouble.
Even natural things like kratom or something like that can cause bad reactions if you try to drink ayahuasca with them.
You don't want to get godsmacked, I'll tell you right now. You
or
think
goddess
it's weird
smacked.
having insects jumping on you and eating off bad, I don't know, energy layers. Trying to play a fool to the guy that's helping you. A shaman is just a person that holds space for you. So if you lie to that person and you die on his living room floor because you've been shooting heroin, that's your fault. But that's going to come down on him.
Right.
Hopefully, shaman, whoever you find that you're working with or yourself, isn't going to lie to yourself. They're going to, like, I work with people. I've been surprised a couple of times. Now I'll drink before I see someone. Or I'll meditate heavily before I let anyone even come into my sacred space, period. And I'll ask, can they come in? And if the answer is no, I'll argue sometimes, like, well, that's my friend. Come on, you don't want to. It's like, nope, your friend ain't ready. You want that to happen in your place? See, that's open working. People are like, oh, what are you working with, monsters in your house and demons? I go, we're monsters and demons. These things are what's there. You put all these labels on them, but we transcend any definition that you have. You're not probably not even your soul isn't human. Like, you're not even from here. Everybody's here trying to do the right thing. They're just stuck doing whatever it is they're doing. You all came here with a purpose.
That's a good point. I gave ayahuasca to somebody one time and they lied to me. And they said that they hadn't taken anything. They had fasted. They had gone through all of that. They were on Suboxone because they were obviously for heroin. And they lied. And they thought that I tried to poison them. And I'm like, dude, I asked you 10 times, did you take anything? And I didn't even find this out until 6 months later. They fessed up and they said, well, we were on Suboxone that night. Okay, what the hell?
Right.
And how are you supposed to save them? Right. This is when people say, well, how do you shaman things then? I say, well, they've shown me to drink early. Like, I have to test anything I'd work with anyone else. So that's the perfect time to do it. You make someone's a brew for the next month or whatever. You go in and they just show it to you. You ask. You have to go through. People hear me. They think, I don't know if it's the name or how we go about things. It just comes off weird maybe sometimes. But they taught me from scratch. Hey, we're teaching you. You're coming. You know why? You're one of us. And I'm like, well, everyone's one of you guys. And they're like, we're all different. So that as the teachers were revealing their selves, I was learning quicker and quicker and quicker. And I'm like, wow. And I've come to the realization, and I tell you this all the time, Chris, that we're them. And I'm not being specific. I mean, everyone is from somewhere else. But the ones that are learning and leveling up and stepping up are all part of this job that we came here to do. And we took the psychedelic that is in nature, that is specifically made to unlock whatever it is in us. Some people call it Enki's gift. Some people call it, the DNA is opening to another 12 strands. Like, there's just name after name for these things. Your Kundalini rises and all that great stuff. I went through all that. I went through that in 3 drinks. I went from knowing nothing. I went from 9/11 as an inside job to my whole world changed. And Chris and Cherie was sitting right there when it happened. He was holding me when I was crying because I couldn't believe it. But I was staring at him and I knew it was true. I'm like, I keep aggressively saying, "Yous are all demons. This is impossible. This is a hallucination. They kept putting me back in my body. Then they showed me and Chris going through the same thing, another life with all of us. He'll tell you we're all there. We were like Indians or something, and I was staring at him, and then it went back, and I said, this is amazing.
So the ancestors are here.
The ancestors are here. And I don't talk like that. I'm from the Bronx. I'm like, yo, what up? And these things are like, no, you're a shaman. You wake up. They were like shaking me, and I was crying, and I'm like, why would this be true? I remember asking for Jesus over and over. You know what they told me? There is no Jesus. Jesus is whoever you make. If you want the Christ, that's different. And then here it is. And I said, all right, show it to me. Show me this Christ. And they launched me to source, and I worked my way down. And I saw about 80% of us are connected fully. The other 20% is just what sci-fi is made up of, clones and artificial intelligence and robots and all kinds of weird stuff. But, it just, the rabbit hole just consistently goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Alex Jones was on Joe Rogan the other day, and in the middle of the whole show just decided they asked him, and he doesn't smoke DMT. He's never tried it, but Joe does. And Alex told him that I'm on paper reading it for 20 years. Just the papers and the news reports and over. And I'm just reporting on stuff. And the overall outcome to the whole thing, he tells, is an artificial intelligence is running the program while demonic entities are trying to get up into the third dimensions, while angelic entities that fell from heaven, which are called the Anunnaki, that blah, 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 on and on. And he just told it like it is. And I go, this guy didn't smoke nothing. He smoked pot on the show. And he's just
Wait,
like,
whoa,
no,
whoa,
this
whoa,
is
whoa,
real.
whoa.
And Rogan,
Alex
who smokes
smoked
DMT.
Alex smoked pot on the show.
Yeah.
I got to check that out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see that.
But people started saying, well, he smoked pot on the show. Alex is mad cool. I'm like, yo, you missed the truth. He spent a half hour at the hour 20-minute mark into it, goes into the Secret Space program and what's going on. And I'm like, this guy, Chris, he went Truth Frequency for like 25 minutes. He's like interdimensional beings that are either giving them the knowledge or are unlocking the knowledge in our DNA to build a technology that would eventually bring forth these beings. And I'm like, that's the AI, right? And then he says it's broadcasting from under us, like from another place. And Joe's like, where do you get this? Where do you get this from? Like, you have to substantiate this whole thing because this is nonsense. And he's like, from all the political stuff that I cover, it all goes to that. Just like Ike says, it goes to shape-shifting reptilians. Well, I'm not into the shape-shifting thing, but I've seen the reptilians. They're hardcore looking, and they're scary, and they're there. That whole money system is from them, and they pray to the artificial intelligence. And then above the artificial intelligence, or maybe right alongside of them, but the ones that made the artificial intelligence are the insectoids. You know, I've seen them over and over and over again doing things, and you're just like, and this comes after like cleaning yourself out. I had to go under Aya multiple times, but DMT every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time it showed me one.
I've seen the spiders and the insectoids too. There was a situation or experience I wrote about a couple of years ago where I was looking at the universe and it was a little ball of energy, and it was 3 insectoid spider-like creatures. It was my first glimpse, but other people are starting to see those. And again, I mean, back to the idea of, are they subjective or objective experiences? I would say because people are seeing the same thing, they're unlocking the same knowledge, they're bringing back the same information about reality. These are objective experiences.
Absolutely.
I have to add to that too. I did DMT before I'd even heard of Terrence McKenna or any of that. I didn't know anything about psychedelics, and the first thing I saw were the elves. And when I heard Terrence McKenna talking about the self-transforming machine elves, instantly I knew, oh my God, other people have seen them too? And I was like, okay, well, obviously something's going on if people are seeing the same thing when they go over.
Yeah, see, I had Joe Rogan talk about it. That's all I knew. And then I heard some of the MMA guys, because I used to do interviews for Combat Broadcasting, and then you. But I was doing it for pain and management of health. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to Peru? I can't even stand up straight, and I'm going on tour, and this is happening, and what do I do? And you were like, yeah, bro, just come here. And we hung out, and then after that couple of days experience, my whole life changed. All it took was the DMT showed me the first time. I said, I tell the story all the time. It sent me to Source. Then I saw Lucifer. Then it took me to Satan, and it was just an energy, and the being never leaves. And it was like, no, I don't want anybody, but you guys keep bringing my energy out, so I just keep taking. He's a taker, right? He doesn't come up with horns, or he doesn't do stuff like that. Those are thought form entities. So I'm having to learn this. I had no background, no knowledge. When Toth, I tell this story all the time. After this just happened yesterday, after the Joe Rogan broadcast, when Alex Jones made a statement, David Seaman had like a nervous breakdown on Twitter and started releasing information that he's just like looking on the internet and going, oh, look, it's these blue avian characters. Chris, I talked about this last year on the show. I smoked. This blue sphere came into the room and it like covered me, but my body was still in the room and it took me up. And I was over by the sun and I was watching these spheres transmute energy that was coming into our universe. And the sun was lashing out at the earth and these spheres were like absorbing energy. And I'm like, wow, this is far-fetched. And I turn around and Toth is talking to me the whole time, narrating it. And I freak out and I start asking questions. And he goes, no, go look around. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I see one human on this ball, this sphere that we're in, and it was that guy Corey Good. But this was 6 months before he even ever came out. And I seen him and he looked like he was hypnotized. And I looked up and those bird avians that he talks about, Ra-Tir Air, was standing there with him and like, no, he's going to talk for us. And I'm like, what's his name? And I seen my reflection and I was a light being. And I'm going, this is too intense for me. And they're like, this is where you're from. What are you talking about? Like, you haven't been gone that long. I go, how could I have had all these lives and lifetimes and not been gone long? And like, I didn't know who to believe and who to trust, but I remember his face. And then he came out with David Wilcock and I freaked out. I said, I was screaming at Paula. I go, that's the guy I saw on the sphere. His last name's Good. And now David Seaman had a nervous breakdown, puts up all this information, and the people in the Pizzagate exposed group starts attacking David Seaman and saying, well, he's going to ruin it for our cause. And I'm like, for what? He's telling the truth. The truth does this. I was crying in my friend's arms like a baby. I don't look like someone that would cry to you like a baby. So it's a big deal, right? When you see this and you find the information, it starts breaking down. You start going, wow, it's coming out in every layer. And Rogan's looking at Alex going, where are you getting this information from? And Rogan smokes. So that means he's not going where we go. And I've said this over and over again. It's where you're prepared. Like, what are you prepared to see? I've seen people get kicked out of ayahuasca sessions. They're too scared. Like, they just stand up in the middle of it and they're like, it's done. And I'm like, what do you mean it's done? You got 4 hours. And they're like, no, I'm done. I got kicked out. She said, you're not going to make it. And I'm like, what? And he's like, it's very, very calm here. Very calm. I'm like, well, that's good. The medicine's still working, but you can't see it. You're just, when Rock came in the room the first time, Chris, I was so excited because I was like, oh, look, there's a portal in my room and there's a bird-headed guy coming. And I almost had a heart attack. I couldn't breathe and he wouldn't come in. He just stayed in the window like that he made. It was a circular piece on the wall. And I said, no, you have to do this. Don't leave me here like this. I don't even know how to explain this. And he says, your human avatar is going to fail if I walk into the room right now. The glory of the light is what does it. You're being astonished by light that you've never witnessed. It's not anything. Like, I'm not a deity. Like, you have to understand, I'm just an advanced consciousness. And I was like, oh, that makes things a little easier to deal with. Because if he would have walked in the room and said, I'm God, bow before me, I would have had a heart attack trying to have a fist fight with a bird-headed guy, because I'm like, I'm not having it. I'm trying to free myself. If you come in talking to me disrespectfully, my job is to discern that information, because anything that doesn't have a selfless act created to it, you don't want to be around. That's why friends are great.
Well said. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Another hour coming up. Let's get to some more questions too. We've got 350 of them. Obviously, we're not going to get to them all tonight. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.
Deeper level of understanding as we traverse through the boundaries of hyperspace consciousness. Here, you will find that reality is altered with a single thought and a single intention. Set your intention now and prepare to travel deeper. Deeper, deeper, deeper. Beyond the veil.
All right, hour number 3 right here on Beyond the Veil. We'll be rejoining Frank Castle at the 6-minute mark. We typically have some articles and stuff like that to go over in this particular segment. We also missed Astro Watch. Do you have any insight into what's going on in the stars?
Not really, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, let's go to a couple of more questions from the listeners.
Sven Richter said, do you think virtual reality will be the new drug?
Let's save that question for when we're rejoined with Frank, because I want to get his take on it as well.
What's a good start to a pre-trip, like clearing and what to do on a trip?
In my opinion, this would be great to bring
that
Frank
was
in
also,
as well. Yeah, let's save that one for Frank too.
I'm trying to find them. Some of these are a little bit silly.
We did get a lot of silly questions, but it's okay. I remember one time, I was at a rave and I was candy flipping, and I was sitting back and listening to the music, and then all of a sudden the music stopped, and then some didgeridoo music started playing. And this guy with this really weird voice like that started talking about philosophy and all these things. And I was like 20 years old, and I stood up and I said, "Shut up, turn the music back on." It was Terrence. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it for 15 years. But then when I started watching Terrence, I said, oh my God, I remember that night. If I can get in a time machine and go back and slap the hell out of myself, I would. Because I had the opportunity to sit down and speak to somebody while I was candy flipping who had so much insight and so much wisdom. So I completely understand when we get the silly questions. Like, oh, you've been doing psychedelics for 25 years. Your brain must be fried. How does fried brain feel? I think I replied to that one by email, and I said, hey, fried brain, I've never tried it, but I did try boiled cow tongue one time. Wouldn't recommend it.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I guess this is a question that I kind of want Chris Gio to answer too. How do you, and this is from Christopher Gallant, how do you channel sexual energy and or gain it?
I think that's a question for you.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, from what I understand, sex magic isn't really a Crowleyan thing, as a lot of people are led to believe. In fact, it actually started with the Celts, even going back to the ancient Egypt and Babylon and Greece. They all knew that at the moment of orgasm, you have a ball of energy that is released from you. And what you put in that ball can actually be manifested. So let's say you want to get a certain job or do well on a test or something like that. When you are about to have an orgasm, you super focus on that one thought, and imagine that thought going into that bubble that you are releasing when you have your orgasm. And people have been doing this for thousands of years, and it really does work. I know of certain instances in my life where I've tried this solo, and it has worked. So that is one good thing about psychedelics, is that you learn how to manipulate the matrix.
Figure the guys out there would like to hear Cherie answer that one instead of me. We'll be right back. We have Frank Castle rejoining us right on the other side.
My dear traveler, remember this. Whatever plane our consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to the plane are, for the time being, our only realities. However, if we mistake the shadows for realities, we find ourselves confusing the upward progress of the ego as an elevation of consciousness. Thus, beware of oneself when you step beyond the veil.
All right, hour number 3. We are going through all of these great questions that people asked. You asked a couple, one about virtual reality. Will virtual reality become the new drug? I can give you my answer to that. However, I want to get Frank Castle's answer to that. What do you think, Frank? We're moving into this technological era now. Virtual reality, is it going to be the new drug?
Yeah, it'll be a drug, just like everything else is. It's pretty easy to see it coming. Simulations within simulations, a game within a game within a game. It's what creators do. So yeah, they're gonna build it so it could. I've seen hologram technology used. You can't distinguish it from reality. So that's where it's headed. So you could be the character in the game. The fear that I have is the long term on that is the computer convinces you need to be, or it needs to be inside of you somehow, right? And then it gets in, and then eventually your consciousness has to get shifted into it, because if you want to live forever and you have a decaying body, so now you're transferring consciousness, and then once it doesn't need you and it understands whatever it needs, it just deletes you, but you feel like you've lived some kind of weird, long existence, but you give up your humanity to do it. There's no need to do any of that stuff. I mean, it's good. Technology's great. I'd love it. But remember, it's a tool.
Who's the little guy in the background?
Squeak.
Aww.
Nice. Does he chase energies around? You were telling me some stories about when you're doing ceremony, how he reacts.
Yeah, there's a few moments when I realized he can see what I was seeing. I had a 4-hour session where they were showing me being abducted in every lifetime, or many lifetimes. And there was one point, the insects came in the room and they were pulling me up the wall, and he sat on me and was swatting them. And I was like, this cat sees what's going on. That freaked me out even more. The deeper I get into this, the deeper it goes. How far are you willing to go when you turn it on full blast? Some people can't do that. Some people can't try to be fearless. It's an everyday thing. You get up every day and you take one more step. That's it.
That is very true. Mm-hmm. If I can answer the virtual reality question here for a moment, I would say that virtual reality is the biggest drug out there right now. It always has been, and we have been high our entire lives because we're living in an artificial simulation, and ultimately we are living inside of a virtual reality world right now. I'm afraid that we're coming to a point where we're creating a simulation within the simulation. This is a whole nother conversation for another time. But what happens when that happens? Can we create a paradox like in the 13th floor? And if so, what does that mean for our construct and our reality? So that's something to ponder there.
It's another trap within a trap, right? Like there's that etheric grid, the wall that everybody hits. That was put there by the archons, right? And then there's the technology grid that they've built, where they're using whatever technology, sonics, to disrupt any frequencies, anything to just take your focus off it, right?
True.
So it's just box after box after box after box. The consciousness just keeps breaking out. But if you start putting stuff in simulations inside the simulations, you don't know what is real anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What if we're in a simulation inside of a simulation inside of a simulation? We wake up to this matrix here, and then there's a whole nother matrix we have to break out of.
Guaranteeing it's like that.
Out of the frying pan directly into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take everything you just learned now and go hit the battlefield.
I never thought about that.
Well, and
that's a scary thought.
I don't think people can handle it right now. Just as a whole, I'm not talking about the people that we're talking to right now, but I'm talking about the others that are kind of way back there and they need to catch up. Terrence McKenna used to say that we're set up to have, I think, what was it, five epic stories and one long poem. And because of our environment and what we've grown up with, TV, movies, video games, we have thousands and thousands of these stories in our minds at all times. And because of that, reality in and of itself is confusing as hell for a lot of people. And even just figuring out what's real and what's not real, or even if their marriage is real, or if, if they really even exist. There's so much mental illness, but it's not mental illness that needs antidepressants. It's mental illness that needs psychedelics to break through that. Culture is a coat that we put on to try to shield ourselves from the rest of the world and being who we are in the process.
Everyone's scared to be alone, so they jump onto the nearest group, whatever suits them. They're born into it sometimes, well, most of the time, and then, everything goes on and on and on. But really, when you witness yourself in the divine, you realize none of that matters. You peel that back and you're like, everybody's brothers. It's great to have the dance that we do for the rain. That's cute. But the reality is this: we're all connected. We're all one. culture just seems at one point to separate that.
You just
it's not
upset
good.
me a little bit, Frank, because I thought that I was breaking out of the damn simulation. I never thought of more layers upon layers after we break out of this construct. So thank
Chris,
you for
we've
ruining
woken
my
up.
night tonight.
Listen, I told you I woke up inside a machine and I saw time, and I said, oh, it came out of like this little thing in the technology, and this being was telling me, come on, you go back. You just jumped up. Your time's not up. And I'm like, wait, what? And I looked around, and there were 12 of us, and people were like waiting to kind of take the next seat. So as people were finished putting their consciousness into a machine that projects them so they experience all, and there's 12 going on at once, right? And then they get up, and when they're done, they walk away, and I'm like, where is this? What is this? Where's Ra and all them? They're like, no, there ain't no Ra here. And I'm like, are you guys serious? They're like, there's always that guy on the outside that nothing can happen to you. Nothing. No matter what happens to you, nothing can happen. You're infinite. Right? Well, you could come out of that, and you're sitting somewhere else. That's when it gets freaky.
That's interesting that you say 12
into the game.
12 other people, like the Jungian 12 archetypes, or the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 disciples of Christ.
Yep.
And it goes on and on and on with the coincidences.
We're sitting around a machine, and there's just 12 chairs. We can see each other, and you just kind of plug in Matrix style. You just look at it. I've seen myself vibrate out of myself there. And I looked like Buddha. I had like the little acorn hat and stuff, and I was admiring that I didn't look like me. And I was going, this is different. I've never experienced this. And I was being pushed through. Like my consciousness jumped out of the body when I was in the chair, went into the machine, and then I saw the warehouse. I've described the warehouse on your show before, and the warehouse was moving and dancing, and there was a guy at the door, and I seen multicolor energies just moving around. It looked like frequencies and colors dancing and different rainbowy things, and I was like, that's interesting. What is that? And you just go in, and everything is preloaded into this machine, into this technology. Anything that could be or should be or can never be or you can think of, it's all loaded in. So it gives us free will and the ability to think any thought and then create it, because we're creators. And I believe we're going in and experiencing this, learning, and then jumping back out. I don't know much more about the other side than a few times where I've seen that failsafe character standing there, and I would get attacked over and over, and nothing would ever hurt me. And I realized that I was just projecting in. And I'm like, this is interesting. And then you could come out of that. That's when it scares me. That's when I go, okay, we went too far. And they go, no, that's you. And I'm like, well, it's all me. Right? It's all me. It's all you.
Interesting.
It's confusing, right? Yeah.
You got any more questions? Or you got any more comments?
I think I have a question right
No, if you
here.
got something you want to comment on.
No, I just want to say that reminds me of a DMT experience where I had where these I was surrounded by these elves, and they were showing me how to speak things into existence. And I remember saying, I'm not ready for this. And it sounded like, I'm not ready. And they're like, yeah, you are. And they, and I said, okay, well, where's God in all of this? I want to see what God is. And they brought me down into like this merry-go-round type of thing. And they were all on the merry-go-round going around me, saying, it's inside of you. It's inside of you. It's inside of you. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never looked at it that way until that experience. And I realized, oh, okay. So everything that we're experiencing is actually inside of us, and we're projections to other people that also have their own realities and their own.
I would say
about
that
a Bluetooth connection that you have from your consciousness to your human avatar. You just Bluetooth it in, not even Wi-Fi. Bing, I can project right into that specific thing. I work perfectly with that model.
Here's a way that I see it. Tell me if this resonates with you. You have the spirit, you have the consciousness, and then you have the oversoul. And the consciousness is more of a data stream than anything else. We're not actually consciousness. The consciousness is the information that we're bringing down. The oversoul is outside of the construct. The spirit is inside of us. The consciousness connects the spirit and the oversoul.
You know, it's interesting that the both of you are saying this, and I'm going to connect everything that we all just said. I see the carousel, right? And the oversoul has got his hands out, and in each hand is a carousel spinning, and there's characters in the carousel on both sides. And the consciousness is beaming in, hitting it in the head. It is projecting through the being into all the different characters riding the carousel. And it just branches off fractally, infinitely. And what you just described is exactly that. If you work up from that, it's your soul, your oversoul, the guy that's outside the program, you know, source itself. And you could just work up and down the pyramid. It's like a birthday cake, like a thick layer, smaller, smaller, until you get to a tip. And that being has a finger on that. And it's all spinning in conjunction. I know that's weird, but the people that are watching would see what I just did. So it is taking place that way. You know, there are oversouls that are multiple consciousnesses. You know, you and I could be from the same oversoul.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
And there's other oversouls connected to oversouls, and it goes up to source. And there's different layers, and some of us are, it's a school. Everyone's in a different class. And we're being tested differently. It's all individual process. So some people might not see what I see or you see, and I might not see what you see because I'm not ready, or that's not my test, or I don't have to do that. I've already gone through that, or it's not necessary for what we're doing. You know, but for you, it could be the entire world. And believe me, they're tests, make no doubt.
Well said.
Another question from Ryan. Ryan says, I want to know your thoughts and ideas about reptilians. What do you think about reptilians, Frank?
We're here first. Reptilians that dominated made a move on us from what they showed me. They've been moving in for the last like 250,000 years, like right after that big flood. When we opened our eyes, there was your gods. Right after the gods just left. And I say lowercase g gods. Thoth, Ra, them, they bounced. The ideas get distorted. The flood comes. The new people that survived, after a couple of rounds, they don't remember what happened. Nobody has a clue. They're just there. And people arrive and say, hey, take a look at this. Then you get your money systems and all that stuff goes into play. It's basically just magic is what they're doing. Oh, and they're very real. And there's all different kinds. This is my problem. I started hating on them because the ones that I saw came up to me and they were 8 feet tall. They told me they would eat me, but they're the watchers and we don't do that anymore, but we would. And they were very scary and they rolled up like a roll up, like from the Bronx. It was late at night and they came in the alley and here they were. And you were like, oh, I wasn't expecting 8-foot reptilian creatures at all. They looked like better versions of that lizard thing from the movie The Spider-Man. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And they just started talking to me. And when they said they weren't going to do anything, I said, you're not going to hurt me, are you? They go, well, we would eat you, but we're not going to. We're above that. Like our consciousness is raised. We don't need ayahuasca for this, that, and the other thing. They were bragging on themselves. And I said, so this is where you come to. You can do this. And they said, yeah. I said, well, can you go up higher? And they said, well, there is no higher. They started breaking down that fourth density. And I'm like, guys, you know, there's like 15 layers, right? And they were like, you're lying. And we had this giant conversation on how you can't get past your own ego. And they left one guy behind to watch me because I was leveling up. That's what their excuse was. We're watching because your light is bright. And you're about to make a whole bunch of other people's lights really bright. And that's a problem for us. There's a sect of them that literally feed on us. They are in touch with our leaders, some of the leaders, and they're in control of that systems. The royal families and bloodlines are that of reptilians. It's very weird what goes on out there. You know, but there's also good ones. I've met ones that teach me. And who would have thought giant praying mantis beings would teach you how to protect yourself from those beings? Who would have thought? The ones that look scarier than the other ones want to help you. And they're the ones that look like they could come in the room and just eat you as well. They could eat the reptilians. And you'll go, oh, this is just too much. And you're shaking, and they're telling you, no, we're going to show you how to beat them and rise, become the divine being you're supposed to come. And you know what's funny? Everyone I work with, after they go through their first experience, that's when the second one, the third one is when they start going, holy, like it was crazy the first time. But when you start learning, it's a constant peekaboo moment. Right? Like, oh, reptilians, oh, mantis, oh, this, like you guys are all there. They're like, you're the new guy on the block. You're the slave because you're in the human avatar, so you can bring the heaven on earth, so to speak. You have the emotional influx, so you can do whatever. And you have these reptilians, like, they're rounding us up like cattle and keeping us in there. And beings are feeding on the energy, and they're feeding on us and the energy. And it propagates itself forward.
Let me chime in on the reptilian situation. So we essentially have, as you mentioned before, the spiders, the insectoids that actually, well, the way they told me, they say they maintain the construct. They didn't actually create it. I didn't get to who created the construct yet, but maybe that's what I need to focus on next time I go in. However, the reptilians are more of a byproduct of this construct than anything else. And the reptilians, some of them work for the spiders, but the impression that I got was they're just kind of rogue in this whole construct. Maybe
they're dominators.
Maybe they evolved from the dinosaurs. I wonder that. And they went underground, and that's where we get...
I think... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just think that they created the dinosaurs. I think they were here first, and then the DNAs got played with. And when beings like us get involved, like you make us, and then you kind of breed with us and stuff, and then you start getting things, and those things start doing the tests because they are one of them. And they start making the clones and the DNAs and the changes and everything. And then it gets too out of control, so they send a flood or they throw a meteor at the planet. Look, you can't have dinosaurs running around. Even, I'll tell you what, you have dinosaurs like a T-Rex running around, or those, I saw the raptor-looking beings. Mm-hmm. You don't want them running around at all. At all. There's nothing you can do. You could be in a tank. They'll eat through it. They're just... the energy that you get off a light being that just makes you feel love and happiness and all that good stuff, you're in front of them, the exact opposite occurs. Mm-hmm. And you can try to hold your ground while they're growling in your face. It's a complete different thing when they're there. You go, this is an aberration. This should not exist. And they go, well, you're mixing DNAs. Everyone's doing it. That's one of the big stages of the game. You get so far into it, you're a creator. Let's create. The DNA is there. The planet is a library of DNA for them to create. And it's he who has, I have this section of the planet. I own this section of the planet. It's like mafia's up on that level too. As above, so below. I should always remember that.
Have you heard of the 9?
I've seen, all right, this is weird. There were beings that I met that were a small in number. I don't know if they were 9. And they were archonic beings. They looked like a council. So I don't know if that's the same 9, because I didn't count them. I was very scared. And I asked them to stop, and they told me no. They locked me out of an area. So if that's the 9 you speak of, it was pretty scary. And that's all I know about anything with the 9.
Kevin in Minnesota was talking about the 9 off air with me one time. Kevin, if you're listening, give us a call. I'd love for you to chime in on this, the 9 that you were telling me about. But I saw a statue of a reptilian, and I've never seen a reptilian. Well, at least I don't think I have. But when I saw this statue, it was like a dinosaur head, like a Tyrannosaurus head with a hood on it. And a human body, but it was reptilian with reptilian claws and reptilian skin. And as soon as I saw that, I said, you know what? I recognize that. I don't know where I recognized it from. I don't know. Maybe I saw it in an experience that I forgot, because some of my experiences I don't remember, but I have seen those beings before. Is that what they look like?
They're like giant versions of that. They're not our size. They're like much bigger, but yeah, it looks muscular, like so muscular. They explained to me, because I asked them, I go, oh, so you guys are so advanced, you have like laser beams and stuff. Like, I was just asking them stupid questions because I didn't know what to say. And they were just explaining, no, we can do it with swords and shields. Pretty much anyone. And I looked at them and they were very menacing. I said, no, you don't need, they were like super soldiers, like giant monster super soldiers. They could just run through the house if they wanted to. And they were like, we just don't do that. We conquer this way through the mind. So we don't have to do that. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. But you guys are still being like jerks. Like you're still interfering in the worst way. Mm-hmm. You're eating off of us. And they're like, well, what are you going to do about it? And it's like, the answer is, what do you do about it? I talk about this a lot. You could say no and it works because they can't come in the room and do anything.
When you think about it though, it's a matter of perspective, because a cow would look at us and go, that's an evil SOB right there.
Please don't eat me.
Right. So, but we walk around and we think we're good people.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if some of the reptilians are the same way, and they're just like, oh, those are just cattle.
I said we're people with consciousness, and they said you're food.
Yeah.
That's what they said to me. I was frightened, dude. I'm not kidding. That was one of the more scary moments. But when they said they don't do anything, like we don't interfere like that, like physically. I'm not going to roll up and punch you in your face and eat the baby out of the room. They don't do that. And then I looked at them and I said, oh, so there's nothing you're going to do? And they said no. And I wasn't scared anymore.
Wow. Very interesting. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. Final segment, but we have a long one coming up.
Everything that is, was, and will be, eternally is, even the countless forms which are finite and perishable only in their objective, and not in their ideal form, the form which manifests itself, beyond the veil.
All right, final segment. Our guest, of course, is the one and only Frank Castle. We're going through some of these questions here, but I think we're going to get to more. I mean, we've got enough questions here to last us for a couple months.
Yeah. Joe Mountain Man said, what's at the end of the light? And I think what he's referring to is what some people describe as the light at the end of the tunnel when you have a near-death experience. And Chris answered this question pretty well, but Frank, what do you think is at the end?
Hold on a second.
Oh.
Yeah, Kevin in Minnesota.
Kevin in Minnesota is calling in. Is he?
Kevin in Minnesota is trying to call in, but Kev, call into the call board, please. I can't bring you on Skype because of the video. So, anyways, go ahead. Yeah,
Frank. So, what do you think is at the end of the light? At the end of the tunnel?
Examples of the light. I've been in the light, like the real light, and I've been in the tunnel. That tunnel always led me back to being born again into the world. So it was almost like, oh, look, I've made it. And then, boop, you're back in. You know, there's like that artificial tunnel that appears at the end of the light. When you follow that, it's like the bug zapper, and they just recycle you right back in. If you just stay out and look around, you'll notice where you're at, and then you're just out of your body. You can look up into densities once you're out of your body, and you can see the real light. It doesn't project down at you. You're connected directly to it. You just follow the line that's in the top of your head directly to it. Everyone's connected.
Wow. And another question, Jacob Paul Patterson said, do you think people have lived other animals' lives on this earth prior to their current, and their attitude reflects which animal was their most prominent reincarnation until now?
I don't believe human beings are animals. I believe that in the program of nature, there's an oversoul, like an animal. They have them on totem poles. It was like the creature's oversoul, like the great bear. And the great bear spawned forth the bear consciousness. I don't think people come from that. I think that if you see an animal characteristic in someone, it's a percentage of that animal in the DNA of that avatar.
Well, my answer to that was that someone told me once that everyone on earth that is able to be born as a human being, and this may just not be related to people like us that come from somewhere else, or so-called starseeds and people like that, but maybe the rest of the humans, they have to live a lifetime as each animal and a lifetime as each kind of plant or rock or tree. And then they have the consciousness that they need to graduate to being human. And that's why we have such a responsibility for the animals, because they are us and we are them.
Well, this was going to be my say to that. Maybe I'm seeing it from a different perspective. We're them. Like, we're connected, just like I'm connected to you and Chris. I'm connected to Squeak. And then I'm connected to that as well. So that's, perhaps I'm just seeing it as one giant connection and not a leveling up progression from them to us, right? Because we have been in past lives other creatures. So it would just go to say that further down the line, maybe we just don't remember. You know, maybe that's the other part of the carousel. Maybe that's the other part, like the big base is all the animals floating around, and that we pulling from that pool of DNA and bringing it up through. That's intense right there.
You know,
It really is.
I've wondered if some animals are AI, organic AI, like fish, for instance.
Yeah.
We live right on the lake, and I've gone out, I've caught a bass, thrown it back in, and then it hits the exact same lure, and I catch the same thing all over again. And
Like
it's
10 seconds later.
Right. And it's like, did you not figure out that this is going to pull you out of the water?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if they're just operating on a program.
The program's nature, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's an actual program. That's how I'm seeing this. And in that program, it's the biologics, like the carbon-based life forms. It starts with that with us in our little universe.
The only thing is, if that's true, then why do chickens and dogs and elephants and the higher order of animals, they cry when they experience loss? Monkeys will mourn over their baby, even if it's not their baby. They'll mourn
cat
over
cries
it.
over me.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're alive and conscious. Like, I think abuse to an animal is the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. They're here for us.
Right.
Like, I don't know. My cat we rescued was Squeak. He would have been dead without me.
Aww.
My life didn't get better till he arrived in it. So it's just this weird symbiotic relationship thing going on.
Well, let me jump in and say
exactly that works, but it's there.
It's not all animals, obviously.
Right.
I'm talking about the lower level, like fish, and single cellular organisms.
Yeah.
Worms, for instance. I think they're all ultimately organic AI. Let's go to Kevin in Minnesota. We're not going to go to any callers tonight, but I did want to get Kevin because he was talking about the 9. Kev, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, Miracles. Thanks for having me on.
You're messing up my video stream by messaging me. So's Brent Thomas. Stop messaging me on Skype. Anyways, what's going on, Kevin?
Not much. Sorry about that. I'm having some issues with my phone, so I threw my Skype on if this cuts out. I think what you're referring to when we were discussing 9 was when we were talking about Star Wars and how we're at that 8th one, and now we got 8 Star Wars that just came out now, but we're correlating it with how we're at 9, where 9 is that number just before 0, because it starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it's 0. Then it starts the cycle again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And a lot of ancient peoples talk about 0 being that godness or goddess or God, we're that absence of nothing. Because we as silly humans, once we put a point on it or a number on it, that's when we start judging it or grading it. Like, I always use the example of how we have our left hand and our right hand, and if we hold them up in front of us, in between our thumbs are nothing, but then we call that 0 point. And then from there we go to the left where we downrate it, or we go to the right where we upgrade it. So it's +5 or -5, but that's the basis of counting, because Mother Nature doesn't have a calculator. Mother Nature just has that natural golden mean spiral of the program that's in the seed. When the seed is planted, it's going to grow from both ends, from the roots to the stem, to penetrate the earth. And if the conditions are creating a challenge, where there might be a pebble or a stone or a piece of wood that's going to prevent that root from growing, well, the root or the stem finds the path of least resistance and continues to grow. But we as silly humans, we put numbers on it. So then we get caught in the construct of the tick-tock, 1, 2, 3, 4, a second, a minute, an hour. And they want us to be in that invisible prison, that illusion of time.
Very well said, Kev.
Very well said.
It must have been somebody else that I was having the conversation with. However, I do remember the conversation on Star Wars, and you had a really interesting theory as to why things are kind of shifting. I don't want to spoil it for people, but do you want to take us down that route?
Well, the really interesting thing that I came with the whole Star Wars thing is that we had the original in 1977. Star Wars came out. George Lucas with this huge THX Dolby surround sound where you could feel the experience. Remember that THX? And ironically, remember that old TXX, that sound where the whole theater vibrated and you felt it to your very core? Now notice how all of the monster movies and all of the times where they make the imitation of Gabriel's trumpet, it's that same blong, but then all of a sudden George Lucas comes out with this and we get the 2000 Bible where we got Lucas, where did Luke come from? And then that experience of the episodes of 4, 5, and 6. And then all of a sudden, in 2007, we get the first episodes, 1, 2, and 3, and then it builds the Bible even more about Anakin Skywalker, born from metachlorites. The mother said there was no father.
To a virgin, yep.
That she just was pregnant. Yeah. And so, 1,000 years ago when the ETs come down and they find a golden anniversary issue of the Star Wars 10-pack, they're going to think it's our Bible. Yep. But then all of a sudden they come out with number 8 or number 7. Number 7 comes out in 2016, which is 2000, 1/6 of 7. And then they come out with the 7th one, which is kind of like a recap of the original release 4, 5, and 6. And then the next movie they come out with is the union of the dichotomy, because there was that dichotomy of 4, 5, and 6, and they're like, oh, the original were the best. And then the younger generation is like, no, 1, 2, and 3 are the best. But then they come with this, bring us back to balance, this latest one that just came out. It's a tie, a go-between, the 0 point between the first set and the second set.
Let me take it a step further here for a second. So at the very beginning, you have Darth Vader, who's Anakin Skywalker. He starts out as a light warrior. Then he moves over to the dark side. And then his son is Luke Skywalker, who's on the light side. And then the shift now happens where you have Rey, who I believe is the Emperor's daughter. I believe that's who her father is. So now you have the dark side turning into the light side, and then you have the light side, which is what's his name? Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm. Kylo Ren.
Yeah, and he's Han Solo's and Princess Leia's son. Mm-hmm. So now you have that bloodline switching over to the light side or to the dark side, and then you have the other bloodline switching over to the light side.
Absolutely. And then when you go back to the original episodes, when at the very end of it, they remastered it in the very end of Star Wars, they showed all of a sudden you could see all the apparitions of the dead Jedis. And then the dead Jedis were talking to Luke, and basically telling them that, hey, we have now just been able to cross the veil.
Your beard's
So
looking good, Frank.
It was awakening us. They were awake.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Right. But then they also, with the alien, remember how many times they used the golden, the Platonic solids, like the Death Star was the sphere, and then they had those Taurus, those ships that were like the Taurus, like a donut.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of that Hindu symbolism throughout the whole movie. And I mean, I think it's just a reveiling or a remembering of the dichotomy, because this gets into magnetism, which is basically field theory. Because like field theory can be magnetism, it can be electrical fields, it can be all sorts of fields, like visions, like my favorite example I've heard is a 5-watt light bulb won't hurt you if you look at it, but if you can condense the 5 watts into a laser, it'll burn right through your skin. But it's the field. It's like, what energy is it that makes the magnet magnetized? We can describe it, but we still don't know what that field is. A radio is a radio, but then the music isn't the radio. The music is coming through the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So we still do not know what fields are. We can only describe what they do. And this gets into the dichotomy of if we 0 point it, then we have positive and negative. 1 plus, 1 negative, and you're 0 point. And that's that consistent of keeping us in oscillation. The red team, the blue team, the red team, the blue team. Now all of a sudden they're throwing purple at us. Ever since Prince, the death of Prince, and with the Queen's purple and the Aquarius being the colored purple, and we're in the age of Aquarius. I mean, it's a phenomenal time, people, and it's just exciting as all hell to watch what they're doing.
Well said, Kev. Hey, thank you for your thoughts. I want to give Frank the opportunity to comment on that. Frank, take us away.
I believe the long time it happened in a galaxy far, far away, a long, long time ago. That's just us. It's just a reimagining of what we are, what we were, what we're understanding. I think it's just been in front of us the whole time. Every time I scream, "What is that?" or "Why is that there?" and then you realize that we're just the blind ones. It's in everything. It's literally everywhere. As you look at, you'll see it. And Star Wars and The Matrix and movies like that have a little bit of the whole thing in it. And it's just, that's why people, they kind of gravitate right to it. Like, oh, it's the best thing ever. It's the best thing ever. And you're like, why? They're like, bro, the Force. The guy teaching the guy the Force.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up as a ghost. He teaches him. Bro, it's like Daniel's son learning from this guy. It's like, yeah, I get it. When you go on the other side and you see it, you're like, wow, that's pretty much using the Force. And that sounds so weird to people. But these things are just like little guide maps to remind you what's going on out there. I said, so you're telling me everyone that writes these stories knows everything that's going on? And they say, absolutely not. It's in your consciousness, though. It's in your DNA. You know it. You think you're thinking it for the first time, but it's already been thought of. And that freaks me out all the time. Some people think, well, it's predestined, then it's written. I'm like, no, you have free will. It's just everything's already been loaded into the machine. You could do anything, but anything had to be loaded in first.
Kind of like ad libs. Those ad libs books that you fill in, like the noun.
Infinite ad libs, yeah.
And it's all written for you, but you're the one that gets to choose the ending to every single sentence. Every single sentence, if it says, I woke up today feeling blank, you can add crappy or you can add awesome, and then I had lunch today. It was blank. Oh, it sucked. It was awful. And then the room goes flat. Or you say, oh, that was the best meal I've ever had. Or maybe it wasn't the best meal I've ever had, but it was pretty good. And then it brings the energy back up. And your whole life is like that, where every decision you make brings that energy up or down, or up or down. And then at the end of the day, when you leave this life, I think it tallies up all the times that you were negative, unnecessarily negative or mean or nasty to people. And then you get to come back and try over again and have to go through those same classes over again and pass those classes.
Well said.
What do you
Absolutely.
think? What do you think, Frank?
I think you're right on. I notice now things like when I ignore something or don't do something, it comes up, or if I failed at something in my life, it comes up again the exact same way. Different players, slightly different scenario, same exact outcome though. And it's like, well, how am I going to pass this? You're going to keep living this over and over and over and over.
Let's go to another question.
I've decided that if this is a simulation, I'm the real one in the simulation, and I'm calling all points home. Right? It's time, this whole level up thing that we talk about and everything that we do and the energies we use to remember and to rise up. The whole idea is to bring it home, right? It's to bring in all the information. That's what it's all about. With great power comes great responsibility. You start taking care of yourself. You start loving yourself. Better things start occurring. You start noticing it in the movies and the television. You go, wow, this is there. Look, it's in the book. It's in the action figures. It's in the video games. You'll hear your kid talk about it when he's just shooting his imagination off. This is the best time to be alive.
Excellent. I agree with you. I think this is like a World of Warcraft type deal. Mm-hmm. We've got a few real players, and then we have the bosses that are artificial intelligence, and then we have others that are walking around that are artificial intelligence.
NPCs, non-player characters. Yep. And they're already loaded into the program, so what's coming out of them, if it's negative against you, it has nothing to do with you, sweetie. It has to do with where they're at and what that non-player character is saying. It's not that you really are a horrible person or you really are that bad. It's mostly that person is acting out a program that you just have to deflect it. A good question from Louise May L. Laurent. I think she's French. Doesn't it affect your relationship with your family or friends or workmates or the people around you?
It's a great question.
Psychedelics.
Let me take this one first and then chime in. We only have about 2 or 3 minutes left, so I'll be quick. When you go through the shift and the elevation of consciousness, you're going to start resonating at a different frequency. And then you're going to find that frequencies that once suited you no longer suit you. So you go out to a bar with your friends, for instance, and you start talking about the mysteries of the universe, and they just don't resonate with that anymore. Or they start talking about sports, and you don't resonate with that anymore because you've seen much more. So it's very natural that relationships will part ways. Family will also part ways as well. If you've ever tried to wake up a family member, you know that it's very, very difficult. And people on the truth journey, for instance, when you wake up to 9/11 and all this, same type of experiences. But it's okay, because as you start to resonate at that higher frequency, more people start coming into your life, and then you start to realize that family are the people you choose, as opposed to the people that you're born to. For instance, Frank is more my brother than anybody else, and I love my brother dearly. He's awesome, my actual flesh and blood brother. But Frank is more of a brother to me because of the frequency that we're resonating on and the spiritual work that's going on in the background, and it's perfectly normal. Frank, take it away.
I lost everyone, and I lost everything I didn't need. It's the best way to put it.
That's an incredible way to put it.
Yeah. And you think, oh my God, I'm losing it all. And then you feel light as a feather, and you start to become indifferent. You're like, listen, I didn't really do anything but try to help myself. I'm taking self-responsibility. I'm becoming, more of an awesome person all around. And all of a sudden, you become a target. or they literally can't be in your presence, or you're a drug addict because you use plants to help you while they're on every drug on the planet. You know, they got a cigarette in their mouth, drinking coffee, and they're taking, oh, I just got my flu shot. And it's like, shut up, get out of here, please. It's and
No, I know what you mean. I went to the doctor the other day, and I was just being me, but I think I offended her because she was asking, are you all going to have kids? And I'm like, it's really tough to raise a kid in this day and age with the vaccine laws and so on and so forth. I've got a friend who's got a 3-year-old. She's never been vaccinated. She's a bright and shining light. She's like, well, I believe in vaccines. And I was like, you can believe in freaking Santa Claus. It doesn't make it real and doesn't make it good for you either. But no, I went there just to get a checkup. I haven't been to a doctor in 20 years, and she checked me out and she's like, you're healthy as can be. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't go to the freaking doctors. But anyways, it's a whole nother story. What do you want to wrap it up with?
I just want to say that when people are raised in a certain way, they can develop these personalities that aren't even theirs. And then what happens is they go out into the world, and that personality is going to clash with the personality that you really are and the personality you are actually becoming. As a result, a lot of people become what's known as the black sheep, or they have, problems like, oh yeah, my sister, she's got problems, or, oh yeah, he's crazy. But in reality, what it is it's two personalities that are clashing with each other, because who you really are is not who you were raised as. Who you really are doesn't have to be who other people say you are. And in fact, usually it's the opposite. And the best thing for us to do is to break through those stereotypes and archetypes that we've pushed on ourselves. Shine our light.
Shine your light. Frank, I wish I could give you the final word. We are at the end of the show, though. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. And stay tuned. We have Brent Thomas coming up, Paranormal Portal, right here on Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception, tfrlive.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, every Saturday we will be doing it live just like this. We love you.
Love you guys.
Thank you for traveling with us this evening. Meditate on your experience. And remember, reality is merely an illusion. Thus, we wish you pleasant dreams. www.beyondtheveilradio